when they start hearing the same thing from several people, they realize, hey, there's a groundswell.
We shouldn't be afraid to pick up the phone and call these people.
To make my vote and realize that I have a say.
We have to be engaged.
That's such a sacred trust.
A very large percentage of churchgoers do not vote.
This is not just a political problem. It's not just a failure as citizens. It's a theological problem. It's a failure as believers.
Are we going to be shaped by life or shape life?
And we have a vested interest in seeing the righteous rule so the people do rejoice. You know, the first time I ever voted, Chuck, I had, you know my story. I was a homeless alcoholic. So I was not involved in politics. I didn't care about those things. I was a minor for much of that time. But even when I became an adult, I just wasn't engaged at that level. But I had met Jesus, got saved, went off to Teen Challenge, then to Bible school. And I was fortunate enough to go to a church that emphasized the importance of elections. And Ronald Reagan was running at that time. And we were coming out of a very depressing era of Jimmy Carter. And they really pressed home to us the importance of the policies of Ronald Reagan and Reaganomics and all of that. And I remember it was so sobering to me to go in and to make my vote and realize that I have a say in who runs this country. I mean, a few years earlier, I couldn't even run my own life. And now I was putting in a vote who's going to run our country. And that's such a sacred trust. And yet, so many of us don't exercise that right.
Yeah. You talked about the communicator, Ronald Reagan. That was probably the first election that I remember also. But I never really got engaged in politics until I was asked to serve on our local city council. And I thought, why would I want to do that? Well, I did that, served for 7 years, and that really helped me get engaged in the political process to the point where I ran for the State House. And I have a new appreciation for any elected official. It's difficult to balance the issues. It was always a piece when I was about ready to take a vote and I got a call from a voting constituent. And we need to do that here. If there's a big issue to come up, we shouldn't be afraid to pick up the phone and call these people. They're put on their pants just like you and I.
Yeah.
So we just have to make sure we're engaged.
I've gone up to the State House a few times, and that's where I learned that lobbyists were simply those who stayed in the lobby and tried to influence
Right.
the legislators.
And there's a number of them.
Yeah, and we can do that. As citizens, we have the right to go up there and just send in a note. Hey, I'd like to talk to my representative and make your wishes known. And I know they feel that pressure when they start hearing the same thing from several people, they realize, hey, there's a groundswell.
Yes.
And it doesn't take a whole lot of drops of water to begin to feel that way.
Yes.
So I know that you share my concerns about the direction our culture's going. The ideology in our schools, the socialist ideologies that are involved in the election, and we've seen the fruit of that. And I know that you've served in the State House. You've been in politics. So tell me, what are your concerns?
I mean, if you look at federal, state, and local, we have to be engaged. And part of my concern is how engaged are people?
Yeah.
Are they registered to vote? Are they going to vote? A very large percentage of churchgoers do not vote. And I think it's a missed opportunity for us to engage and make sure that we get people in position that are going to support our views and our values.
This is not just a political problem. It's not just a failure as citizens. It's a theological problem. It's a failure as believers. Psalm 8 says that God delegated the earth to man. And one of the ways in which we exercise that authority is in voting. And, so many people complain about where we're at, yet we haven't done what we need to do. So we've talked about launching a civic ministry, and we want to do some things to become the solution to these problems. So what are your thoughts, seeing as you're going to be heading this up?
Are we going to be shaped by life or shape life? And I think this is an opportunity for us to shape life, change the direction, whether it's federal, state, or local politics. Because if we are silent, they will think that whatever they do is okay. And so we need to be engaged not only in voting, but being engaged in meetings, because they have to stand for the values that we believe in.
You know, Proverbs says, when the righteous rule, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. And it's up to us to vet them and to figure out which camp they belong in. I know we also talked about helping people get registered to vote, and even, absentee ballots. So tell me about that.
If you are not registered, we can guide you in the direction you need to go to be registered. Or if you've moved, you may be in a different precinct, so you should re-register. If you are not around on the election day, we can help you through the process of requesting an absentee ballot. We can't do it, but we can help you through that process. Another thing we've talked about is if you need a ride to the polls to vote in person, we can help in that respect too. But before all that happens, we're going to try to partner to get a voter guide for some of the elected officials. And we've talked about this as a regional church. It covers a lot of territory, probably 9 counties.
Wow.
So it's going to be difficult to have a voter guide for every single candidate. But they all have websites, and there again, we can help you through the process. We're going to have a map set up, so if you're not sure what area, who your representative or senator is, we can help you through that process also.
Yeah, I think that's great. You know, I remember probably 30 years ago, I read a quote, the hour is late when small men cast great shadows. Right. And we are at that time.
Yes.
People with a lack of character are exerting an enormous amount of influence in our culture. And that's happening on our watch. And there's things we can do. We still are a constitutional republic where we have a voice, we have a vote, and we need to exercise them.
This is not an initiative just for Heartland.
Yeah.
Just think about if all the churches in the area would engage in the same thing that we're looking at. Just as an example, 2 years ago, some of the elections were won by less than 10 votes. And so if you look at just 10 more voters in that district would have voted, you would have a different person in office.
Wow. And an entire different agenda.
Correct.
Good or bad.
Right.
Yeah, that's a scary thing. Sobering thing.
Yeah.
And motivating.
So, to the other churches, I would encourage you to contact Pastor Dave. I'd be more than happy to come out and visit with different churches, whatever that may be. That's how important this is to me, because we can change the direction of the country and also some of these local elected officials also.
That carries a little more weight for me, seeing as you sat in the State House for 11 years.
Yep.
And you've been on both ends of this thing. You now sit as a concerned citizen, but there was a time where you were one of the decision makers. And so if you're telling me that the voice of the people makes a difference, I'm going to take your word for it.
I would say there's 2 buttons. There's a yes button to vote or a no, but there's no maybe. And so we have to make sure we educate those that are in elected positions to make sure that they can make a decision that's going to support our views and our values.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't think we can emphasize enough how important it is for people to engage and mobilize to make a difference. Just think if 100% of churchgoers would vote.
Yeah.
Just look at how that would impact an election.
Yeah.
It's incredible to think about.
It could absolutely change the direction of this nation.
Yep.
Yeah. We don't want this just to be mobilized for one election and then we put that to sleep. There's a tendency for us to gear up every 4 years, but then we dismantle the machine and then we've got to recreate it. And we really feel like we need to be the answer day in and day out.
Right.
You had said something to me earlier about it not being a sprint.
And we're in a marathon. Because beyond the election, there's going to be local elections. We have to engage in school board elections or supervisors or city council, whatever that would be. everybody sees a splash of a federal or state election, but the local is critically important as well. So we're going to encourage people to go to school board meetings or city council meetings or supervisor meetings, however we can engage to make an impact, to make sure that our voice is being heard.
The left, leftism, and I make a distinction between liberalism and leftism. Leftism has a tendency to do things undercover, in the dark, behind closed doors, and we need to make sure that's not allowed to happen. So we need to show up, and we need to be letting our voice be heard. We want to find other ways to serve the community. Salt's no good if it stays in the salt shaker. And so we've got to get outside the church, and political involvement is a way for us to serve the Lord. There's a lot of people that say, you shouldn't get involved in politics. The fact is, that is the mechanism by which the people who rule over us are chosen. And we have a vested interest in seeing the righteous rule so the people do rejoice. And
And I would just encourage everybody to get engaged. If you've got a great idea, come to us. Because we don't have all the answers. And so, if you've got an idea we should pursue, I would highly encourage everybody to make sure that they voice that.
Yeah, that's good. And everybody, there's different gifts, different opportunities that different people can access. There's no one of us that can do it all. But we can all do some, and together we can get it done.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Thank you, Chuck.
You bet. One thing that I just read started a book, and I just want to read just one paragraph here. It says, this book is a warning about what can happen when a church forgets that true power lies not in the world's wisdom, but in Scripture. And there again, I go back to what you said Sunday, shape. Are you going to be shaped by life, or are you going to shape life? And this is an opportunity to shape life in a big way.
Amen. Well said.
Thanks.